In our next tutorial, we will show you how to edit a page on your website. Upon logging in and being greeted with your dashboard, we will simply go to the front end of the website and we will navigate to a page we are wishing to edit. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to edit the pre-primary page. Once the page is loaded, we can simply select Edit Elementor at the top of the page. Please note that I'm going to be doing this in a new tab, and I'm going to be moving the front end to the right, and I will have the back end on my left. Once the page is loaded, we will use our mouse cursor to navigate around the page. As you can see, while we move around the page, different sections will be highlighted. We will start off with the sections. Going from the top of the page down, the first thing that we highlight will be in a blue bar and will give us an option to edit the section by clicking the 6 dots at the top. By selecting this, a window will appear on the left hand side. Here we can change the layout of the section. We can choose to stretch the section. We can change the width of the section. We can change the column gaps. In this case there are no columns, so we do not need to change this. And we can change the height. It is currently set to minimum. We can change it to fit to screen, or we can set it as default. We will set that back to minimum height, and we can change the minimum height with the slider seen below. I will set that back to default. Next we can choose the column position. Here we have set it to the middle, but we can put it to the top, stretch it, or put it at the bottom. We can also tune our vertical alignment, which we have set to default. And our overflow HTML tag is for more in-depth development, and you need not worry about that, as well as parallax and structure, which are add-ons. Lastly, in the structure you can see we currently only have one column set to 100%. Moving on to the styling section, here we can choose the background. We can choose a color. By selecting the icon, we can choose a color. As you can see, the color is not shown because we currently have an image. We will now remove this color, set it back to default, and we can select the image. We can choose to remove the image, or by selecting the actual image, we can choose to change it. In this case, we have got a nice shot of the school, but we can change it to any image we wish. As you can see, the image has changed. I will now set that back to default, and we will move forward. Next, we can choose the position. As you can see, it is currently set to center left, but we can put it to center center. As you can see, the image will change accordingly. Next, we can choose whether we want the image to scroll with the page, or if we want it to stay fixed. As you can see, we currently have it fixed, which means the image stays and the rest of the page scrolls. If we set it to scroll, the image scrolls with the page. Next, in the repeat, if the image is small, we can choose to repeat the image. As you can see, currently we have set the image to cover in size, so we can't see the repeat options. We'll put that back to default, and here we can change the size. We can set it to default, auto, cover, contain, and custom. As you can see with the custom, we can choose our own sizing. We will set that back to contain. My apologies. We will set that back to contain, cover, and we will move on. As you can see, we also have scrolling effects. At the moment, we have a transparency effect set on. Moving forward, we can choose to apply the effects on different screens. Next, we will come to the mouse effects, which in this case is disabled, but we can add them by simply enabling and choosing the option we wish. We will set that back to default, and we will move on to the background overlay. As in our previous tutorials, the background overlay, as you can see here, is currently set to a color. Next, we can choose to change the transparency of this color, either making it darker or making it lighter. I will set that back to default, and we will continue. Next, we can choose to add a border to this entire section by choosing a type, choosing a size of our border, and the color. You will see that the border will appear real time. We'll set that back to default, and you can see we can do the same thing for hover. So we can choose to add a border only when we hover over the section, as seen there. I will set that back to default, and we will continue. Next, we have a shape divider. As you can see, we currently have the top selected, and we can choose a shape divider. In this case, we will choose triangle. We can change the color of the triangle, the width, as well as the height. We will set that back to default, and we can do the same for the bottom. That is a bad example. As you can see there, that works better. Lastly, in our typography, this will change all of our colors, but we will do this in another section, so please do not worry about this. Lastly, in the Advanced tab, we have come to our margin and our padding. Our margin is the spacing outside of the container, and our padding will be the spacing inside of our container. So as you can see, if I unlink the values, and I insert a value of 100 to the top, the spacing between the container and the content has increased by 100 pixels. I will remove that, and we have seen everything jump back up. I will now set that back to default, and we will continue. In our motion effects, we can add a scrolling effect to the section. We will select enable it, and we will choose the effect we wish. I will set that back to default, and we will continue. In the responsive section, here we can choose to hide the section on different screens. Please note that we will not really require this, and it is more in depth. The attributes and the custom CSS you will not need to worry about, as that is for more in-depth development. Now that we have covered a section, we will move on to a column. Again, using our mouse, we will navigate around the website, and as you can see, a column is indicated by a dotted border. We will select the Edit Column button, and the window on the left will appear. Again, in the layout, we can change the column width, vertical alignment, horizontal alignment, and so forth. In our styling section, we can choose to add a background to this column. I'm going to add a background color of red, and as you can see, it is only applied to this column. But you can see that the red is actually applying outside of the column, and that is because of our margins and padding, which we will cover later. But as you can see, this coloring only applies to this column. I will set that back to default and continue. We can also add an image as a background, as seen here, or we can remove it. Again, we can add scrolling effects and mouse effects to the background. We can add an overlay to the background, as well as a border. Again, in the advanced section, as you can see here, we currently have the margin set to -5%. As you can see, that moves everything up by 5%. If I was to remove that, you can see that that column is now sitting neatly. I will set that back to -5, and we will continue. In our motion effects, again, we can add scrolling effects and mouse effects to this column, as well as an entrance animation. As you can see, that only applies to the column that we have selected. Lastly, in our responsiveness, we can choose to hide the section, and in the attributes and custom CSS, you will not need to worry about, as that is for more in-depth development. Now that we have covered a column, we will go on to an actual widget. Again, using our mouse cursor, we will move around until we find a widget which is highlighted with a blue bar. As you can see in this case, we have an inner section which is classified as a widget, and within that widget we have another widget which is titled a text editor. By selecting the edit button, the window on the left hand side will appear. As you can see, there is a pre-primary, and we can change the text and it will change live. Next, in our styling section, we can choose the alignment of the text. We can choose the text color. We can change our typography. By selecting the edit button, we can change our font, our size, our weight. We can transform the text. We can add style to the text. and we can even decorate the text, as well as change the line height and letter spacing. Next, we will move on to the advanced section. Again, here we have our margin and padding, which won't really be required to change. Again, we have our content protection, advanced tooltips. As you can see, these are EA add-ons, which is not used at the time being. We can also add motion effects, as described earlier, as well as add a background to this text. As you can see here, we will select classic, and then we can choose our color, or we can choose an image. As you can see, that image overrides the color. We will set that back to default, and we can add a border to this widget, as seen there. We can change the positioning, which you will not need to worry about, the responsiveness, again, which you will not need to worry about, the attributes and custom CSS, which you do not need to worry about. Scrolling down, there is one more section I would like to show you. As you can see, it is very simple. We will use our mouse cursor to navigate the website until we find the section that we are wishing to edit. As we scroll down to the South City Church, we can see here that the word website is in a darker text and is actually a link. We can see that by when we hover over it, the cursor changes to a hand icon. We will edit this widget, and on the left hand side you will see that the website is there, and when we click on it, another window appears. As you can see here, this is currently taking the user to the church website. We can edit this by selecting the edit button. Here we can change the link to take us to wherever we wish. We can also choose the settings, and then here's a more detailed page. Here we will enter the URL that the word will take us to. We'll choose the link text. We can choose whether or not the link opens in a new tab, and so forth. Once we are happy, we will select Update, and we will scroll through and ensure that everything we have changed is correct. Once we are happy with all the changes we have made, we will simply select Update, and that will save the changes made to the page.